Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Once upon a time there lived a queen in the world. One winter day, she sat by the window made of ebony wood, embroidering as she gazed at the snow. By accident, she pricked her finger with the needle. 3 crimson drops of blood remained on the fabric. "How beautiful it looks," she sighed. "I wished for a daughter with cheeks as red as blood, skin as white as snow, and hair as black as ebony." Soon, the queen's wish came true, and she gave birth to a daughter. The girl had skin as white as snow, hair as black as ebony, and lips as red as blood. The queen named her Snow White. The queen passed away, and the king married another woman. She was stunning but envious and vain. The new queen's most cherished possession was a magical mirror. Every day she would approach it and ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror was enchanted to speak only the truth, and each time it would reply, "There is no one in the world who can compare to your beauty, Queen." Meanwhile, Princess Snow White grew up and became more beautiful with each passing day. One day the queen approached the mirror again and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" This time she heard a new response. "It's hard to match your beauty, Queen, but Princess Snow White is even more beautiful than you." The queen turned pale with anger. From that moment on, she deeply despised Snow White. The girl continued to grow up, becoming more and more beautiful. In her fury, the queen summoned a huntsman and commanded him, "Take Snow White with you into the dark forest," she ordered. "Kill her and bring me her heart." The huntsman led Snow White into the forest, but couldn't harm such a lovely girl. "Go away and never return," he said. "What shall I do?" cried Snow White as she wandered through the woods. Eventually, she stumbled upon a small cottage in a clearing. She was tired and hungry, so she peered inside. What a marvelous sight it was! In the middle of the room there was a table with the 7 plates and 7 spoons. Nearby stood 7 small chairs, and against the wall were 7 little beds. The cottage was empty. Snow White lay down in one of the beds and quickly fell asleep. Unbeknownst to her, the house belonged to 7 dwarfs, who spent their days laboring in the nearby mine. In the evening, they returned home and lit 7 candles. "Whoa, whoa! Someone is here!" exclaimed one of them upon seeing Snow White. The cry woke Snow White, and she found herself surrounded by the 7 little men. "How beautiful she is!" the dwarfs marveled. "How did you come here, dear girl? Can we help you in any way?" one of them asked with a gentle voice. Barely holding back her tears, Snow White told the dwarfs about the evil queen. "Do not cry, my dear," one of them said. "You can stay with us, far away from the wicked stepmother." Snow White gratefully agreed. That same night, the queen approached the magic mirror. Unaware that the hunter had deceived her by bringing the heart of a slain animal, she smiled and rubbed her hands in joy, eagerly asking, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror's answer greatly angered her. "You are unmatched in beauty, Queen. But Snow White is fairer and lovelier than you. She dwells in the dwarf's secluded cottage, where peace resides." "I must destroy that girl myself," the queen decided. The next morning, as the dwarfs went to work, Snow White began tidying up the cottage. Soon someone knocked on the door. It was the queen, disguised as an old peddler woman. "Look at the lovely things I have brought for you, dear child," she wheezed. Snow White was enchanted and allowed the old woman to show her how a velvet ribbon would look around her neck. Unexpectedly, the peddler woman pulled the ribbon tight, causing Snow White to fall to the ground. Fortunately, the dwarfs returned from work very soon. They found Snow White lying on the ground, barely breathing. They quickly untied the ribbon, and the girl started to breathe again. By morning, she felt much better. "That was the wicked queen disguised as a peddler," said the dwarfs, sternly warning Snow White not to open the door for strangers. Meanwhile, the evil stepmother learned from the little magic mirror that Snow White was still alive. This time the queen disguised herself as a kind old woman selling poisoned combs. Once again, Snow White nearly died from the poisoned comb. This time the dwarfs were furious. "Remember," they said, "never let anyone into the cottage." The queen, upon learning from the mirror that her plan had once again failed, was consumed by anger. Early in the morning, the queen took a basket of poisoned apples and approached the window of the cottage where Snow White lived. "I won't come inside," she pleaded with Snow White. "Just try my apples. Juicy, sweet, almost too sweet." Snow White believed her and took a big bite of the ripe apple. Upon returning home, the dwarfs found Snow White lying motionless on the floor. Despite their efforts, this time they couldn't bring her back to life. "We have lost the most beautiful girl in the world," they wept. Meanwhile, in the distant palace, the wicked queen stood before the mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror promptly replied, "There is none on earth who could compare in beauty to you, queen." The dwarfs couldn't bear to part with Snow White. Her hair remained as black as ebony, her skin as white as snow, and her lips as red as blood. The little beings crafted a crystal coffin and gently placed Snow White inside. Through the crystal, she seemed to be merely asleep. Day and night the dwarfs stood watch over the crystal coffin. One day, a prince happened to pass by. As soon as he laid eyes on Snow White, he fell in love. "Please allow me," the prince requested, "to take her to my father's castle and safeguard her slumber." The sorrowful dwarfs agreed. As the prince's servants carried the coffin down the mountain, they stumbled, and unexpectedly, a piece of poisoned apple dislodged from Snow White's throat. She opened her eyes and beheld the handsome prince. "I love you," the prince whispered. "Please, be my wife." Snow White smiled joyfully. The dwarfs were overjoyed that Snow White was alive and would remain with the prince. Soon, Snow White and the prince were wed. They lived together happily ever after. As for the evil queen and her mirror, nobody ever heard of them again. The Rabbit Reader read for you. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and dream.